was here in 2004, just on holidays, came over for a month in summer, and I'd never done the London thing like a lot of mates had, and I thought I had a great month out drinking a few beers as you do and just having a great time, and thought I could really enjoy being over here. So I thought, how can I stay over here? So my eureka moment was I rang up the Department of Sport and asked to speak to the Sports Minister, and they said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, this is who I am." And they said, "Well, yeah, you can't just ring up and ask to speak to the Sports Minister, mate. It doesn't happen, so see you later." So the next day I rang up the Sports Minister again, rang the same number, and they said, "Mate, we told you yesterday, you just can't ring up and get an interview." I said, "Okay, no worries." I rang up the third day and said, "Look, it's me again, I want to speak to the Sports Minister." So they took my number and said, "No promises there, we'll come back to you, but no promises." They rang me up about a week later, just before I was due to go back, and said, "You've got 10 minutes with the Minister." So I borrowed a suit, went to see him, gave him a footy, and said, "Look, I've got this great game that can help you alleviate childhood obesity. Involves running, jumping, kicking, bouncing, all, both sides of your body, no offside, you can use your hands. All I need is, I know you're not going to give me money, but can you give me some office space?" And that was it. That was the reason, that was sort of the vehicle of staying in London. And when I got back to Australia, about a month later, I got a letter saying, "Yeah, come over." The negative aspect of Britain can be tough to deal with. I mean, back in Australia, we are very positive, we're very can-do. Over here, it can be very negative and it can be very frustrating. There seems to be a lot of red tape. Just some examples, health and safety laws over here. The dreaded health and safety prohibits you from doing a lot of things and can be very, very frustrating to deal with. What can take a day in Australia can sometimes take a month over here, which is maddening. But Australians, we can do, and if a wall gets put up in front of us, we tend to just smash it down. Whereas in England, if a wall's put up, well, we might have a meeting and a strategic review, and then another meeting, and then maybe another meeting after that, which I just can't be bothered with. So if somebody says to me, "No, it can't be done," my attitude, it's not a knockback, it's feedback. So how can I turn that no into a yes? I won't be deterred by a wall. I'll just smash through it and make it happen. So yes, it's frustrating, but it can be overcome. People say that London's a shithole. Now that's a bit harsh, but it's not exactly inaccurate either. I mean, it's a great city, and the old Samuel Johnson quote, "A man who is tired of London is tired of life," is very, very apt. But some of the things can really fucking piss you off over here. I think the number one thing would be customer service. Customer service over here is just a disgrace. You go into a Sainsbury's or a Tesco, which is the supermarket stores over here, and they're rude. They can be quite ill-mannered to you as well. It's just, if you're used to the customer service back home, it's just a real eye-opener when you first get here. I mean, we speak the same language, but in those sort of attitudes like customer service, we're miles and miles apart. Politeness as well, and I think this is more London than the rest of England, because I've travelled a fair bit throughout England. The politeness, I think, is common to any major city. I mean, getting on the tube network here, it's a good network, but people barging you out of the way when you're trying to get off the tube and not waiting for you and just pushing you around can be very, very maddening and very, very stressful. I mean, I'm from Darwin, which is 80,000 people, and then coming to London with 8 million people and having to commute every morning is just is maddening. When I first got over here, I'd get on the tube and say hello to people, and they'd look at me like I escaped from an insane asylum, and bury their heads in the paper and look anywhere but at me. So I quickly learnt not to do that, When the Australians first started coming, they lived in Earl's Court, and we called Earl's Court Roos or Earl's Court Kangaroos, and they're all bartenders. That's shifted now with a lot of EUs and taking those roles. A lot of Polish guys, for example, becoming the bartenders as opposed to the Aussies. The Aussies have moved more into sort of finance and into more sort of professional roles, white-collar roles. But the perception of Australians has definitely changed. Initially, I thought we were viewed as quite quaint, just a bunch of convicts coming over. But I think we've become more arrogant and become more like Americans in the sense that we're always harping on to England people about how our country's better and it's warmer and it's better in every capacity. Now, that's fine, but after a while, it starts to grate on anybody. If a Pommy was telling me in Melbourne, England's so much better than this place, I'd say, well, mate, fuck off back to England. And I think that sort of attitude is prevailing over here now. If Australia's so great, why are you over here? So I cringe every time I see a young bloke, 21, 22, with his mate just arrived from Heathrow, talking at the top of his voice, saying, "Oh yeah, mate, we're in London, let's go down the walkabout and have a couple of beers," and just putting it on and like thinking they're the first Australians that have ever arrived and that Londoners have ever seen. I mean, Jesus Christ, but they're young blokes and you can sort of understand where they're coming from. But I think that we need to tone it down a little bit and just get on with the job not really ham it up so much and try and sell ourselves so aggressively is the word I'm looking for. I mean, I think we're a great country, we're a great people. We don't really need to be in your face to be recognised. It's sometimes labelled as un-Australian to criticise fellow Australians. I reckon that's absolute bullshit. I mean, Australians will say, oh, you know, we're so much better than the UK, we're so much better than the USA. There's crime and there's lots of guns in those countries, and well, so they're in Australia as well. We have the same problems, you know. We have idiots and morons going around shooting, killing people in Australia as well. You can't just say Australia's this paradise where everything's perfect, because it's bloody not, you know. So I think there needs to be a bit of reality injected into the debate, and I just don't think that some people, not all Australians, but there are some people who just portray Australia as some perfect utopia, and it certainly isn't. Steve Irwin was a great Australian, absolute superstar of a bloke. He was a total Aussie larrikin, and he was very passionate about what he did, and anybody in my books who's passionate about what they do and put in a lot of effort into backing up their passion, I think is fantastic. He really cared about the wildlife, he really promoted it, and most importantly, he put his money where his mouth was as well. So I just thought that he was sensational, and his death was an absolute tragedy. And Germaine Greer, that I tell you what now, like, she's been over slagging off Australians for years and years and years. What she said about Steve Irwin outraged myself and outraged many, many, many Australians, right? And she should never have said those comments. So I just think he's an absolute legend, and his death was a tragedy, and I think he's sorely missed. There are two types of people in this world. There are people that follow their dreams, and there are people who just think about it. I think that a lot of people who criticise Steve Irwin just don't have the courage to follow their dreams. They're happy to push their pen, take away their paycheck every week or every fortnight. Don't have the courage like Steve did, right? So if you don't have the courage to follow your dreams, don't criticise people like Steve Irwin, period. I'm very Australian. I'm very passionate about my country. I'm over here promoting Australian football, so I promote Australia every single day of the week. I'm very, very proud to be Australian. At the same time, though, you know, I have a global view. I recognise that Australia is one country out of about 200 in the world, and I think to confine yourself, your life experience, just on one country during your life, I think it's a bit limiting. You need to go out and see the world, see how other people think, see how they interact, and I think that will enrich you not only as a person but as an Australian. Going back to Australia, I mean, I know that other Australians have left, they've been here for quite a while, and they've gone back to Australia and have felt a bit bored after having lived in London, and I can see that being the case. I mean, London just electric. There's so many things going on, so many things to do. I went back to Melbourne last year for a few weeks, and I felt bored while I was there. So I mean, you know, that is a factor. For me personally, I would probably look at going somewhere else after London. I tend to be here for a while, but my aim is to expand the junior program to other parts of the world. I've already had meetings in a country on the continent this year about doing that. And so, I mean, I would think that I would probably go to another country. My next challenge, the reason I left was that I was promoting Australian football to Australian kids. I didn't regard that as a challenge. I didn't think that was particularly hard. To promote Australian football to English kids is the next challenge, and has been hard, but been very rewarding. My next challenge is to promote Australian football to kids that don't speak English. I'd like to go to somewhere like Spain or France, throw myself in the deep end, and have to learn the language. And that would be the next challenge for me. The number one thing I miss about Australia is the feeling of the sun in my bones. I mean, you cannot replace that feeling. When I go home, I walk out of the airport and I always stand there, I look like an idiot, but I stand there for 2 or 3 minutes, just with my eyes closed, soaking up the sun, and it's just the best feeling in the world. I also miss, being from Darwin, there's a thing called Paul's Iced Coffee, which is like ice break. I don't drink that big M rubbish, but Paul's Iced Coffee is the best iced coffee in the world, and a little cherry ripe to help wash it down, just sensational. Well, there's a lot of cliches, you know, you miss Tim Tams, but you can buy Tim Tams over here, you can buy Vegemite over here. I miss the footy, obviously. You know, I miss going to the MCG and watching the Hawks destroy some hapless team. Well, not often, but watching them destroy their opposition at the G. There's nothing like being at the G. I've been to a few sporting events over here, and there's, you know, you can go to the Lords, and yes, well, good shot, but being at the G is sensational. So missing the sport, missing the sun, missing the basics like the iced coffee and the cherry ripe. So a lot of stuff on the internet now where you can, I read the Herald Sun online every day, so you can stay in touch, but just those little basic things I really miss. I'm going to go back to Australia, yes, definitely. I'm not going to go up to the Shetlands and retire up in the cold, no. I could not imagine staying here. England's a place, or London's a place where you come to work. It's not a place where you stop. You would never retire here. I would like to retire on the Gold Coast, or if global warming continues to escalate in Melbourne, with lovely tropical climate. You never know what's going to happen at the moment. But going back to Melbourne or the Gold Coast, probably those two regions, I'd go back to retire. But I intend to be away from Australia for some time. There's a lot of work to be done.